Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
It's heartbreaking for me to know that another family is going through a grieving process for a situation that could be prevented.
A 12-year-old boy is dead in Prince George. Police say he took his own life because of online sextortion. Plus,
we are holding multinational pharmaceutical companies accountable for their role in today's public health emergency.
In the midst of BC's brutal toxic drug crisis, the province hopes to certify a class action lawsuit against drug makers and marketers. And
it's just not as fun to ski, to be honest with you, than natural snow.
Where's the snow? Interior resorts are hoping for more precipitation as they get ready to open.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. The tragic death of a child in Prince George has prompted police to issue a warning to parents and guardians about the dangers posed by sextortion. RCMP say a 12-year-old boy took his own life last month after being targeted online. Mounties are still trying to identify a suspect. And as Yvette Brent shows us, his family's grief is all too familiar to another.
It's hard,
For Carol Todd, news another child has taken their life after a case of sextortion is a jarring reminder of her own pain.
It's heartbreaking for me to know that another family is going through a grieving process for a situation that could be prevented.
This would have been her own daughter Amanda Todd's 27th birthday. She took her own life 11 years ago after she was extorted online by a Dutchman, now convicted in her death.
These predators out there are, they're more advanced than they were even when this was happening to Amanda.
Prince George RCMP now say a 12-year-old boy died by suicide in October after he became a victim of sextortion.
These are not quick investigations to go through, determining where in the world this suspect may be.
Sextortion is when someone demands cash or sexual favors by threatening to expose intimate images online.
You really see this manipulation start to happen of really aggressive and explicit threats, such as, I'll go after your family, I'm going to share this and they won't love you anymore. And they'll really feed into the fears that you might have.
Experts estimate there are more than 50 cases of sextortion a day in Canada, and it's getting worse, and are urging governments and big tech companies to do more to protect kids.
Well, governments, yes, have to absolutely step in and do something. So it's been a totally abysmal, failed social experiment.
Police are urging parents to talk to their kids about the dangers.
Knowing what I know now, I would have had deeper conversations with my child and telling her that you can come to mom or dad anytime and tell us and we'll help you.
Yvette Brent, CBC News, Vancouver.
Stories like this can be very upsetting for some people. If you need help, you can reach the BC Crisis Line 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The number is 1-800-784-2433. That is also 1-800-SUICIDE. They offer help in more than 140 languages. And we'll have more on sextortion crimes, why they're becoming more prevalent, and why it targets boys, and how to talk to children about it, coming up later in the broadcast. BC is taking another step in its years-long battle to hold pharmaceutical companies accountable for the toxic drug crisis. Today, it sought to certify a class action lawsuit against them. As Michelle Gassoub explains, BC is taking the lead for other Canadian provinces in a move they call unprecedented.
From the Vancouver law courts, an urgent pledge from the province.
We are holding multinational pharmaceutical companies accountable for their role in today's public health emergency.
BC is moving to certify a class action lawsuit against the companies that make opioids and those that market them.
The proposed class action is the first of its kind, with the provinces, territories, and Canadian government aggressively working together in this fight.
The province called this an unprecedented move against companies they allege use deceptive marketing to sell highly addictive drugs. The toll of toxic drugs in this province has been brutal. BC first declared a public health emergency in 2016. That year, just shy of 1,000 people died from toxic drugs. Since then, deaths have climbed almost every year, peaking in 2022 with over 2,300 dead. The province is seeking to recover the healthcare costs of the crisis, a move previously used to go after cigarette companies.
While no amount of money will ever bring back the people who have lost their lives due to toxic, unregulated drugs, our battle against the wrongful conduct of businesses and their marketing consultants is another meaningful step to address the toxic drug crisis.
The province wouldn't put a dollar amount on what it's seeking, but says it would be substantial. Already, one defendant, Purdue Pharma, settled with BC for $150 million. But experts say the province faces a long, drawn-out battle.
Looking at it from the outside, it looks to me like they do have a good chance. There are some indications, though, from the tobacco litigation that this is likely to be a very long battle.
Already, the Supreme Court of Canada agreed to hear a constitutional challenge by 4 of the companies, who say allowing BC to recover costs on behalf of other governments is overreach. The certification hearing is expected to last 4 weeks and could be followed by a civil trial. Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Vancouver.
It was a deadly weekend on our roads. Crashes in Chilliwack, Surrey, and Whistler have killed 5 people. On Saturday night, Chilliwack RCMP received reports that a vehicle had become airborne before crashing roadside. Police say that driver died on the scene. Later that night, a 2-car crash in Surrey sent a male passenger of 1 car to hospital, where he later died. Police say the driver ran away. The male driver of the other car was taken to hospital with minor injuries. The 3rd crash happened south of Whistler. Mounties say a vehicle veered off the road and hit a tree. 2 adults and a child were killed, while 1 woman was taken to hospital in stable condition. The mother and stepfather of a 6-year-old boy have pleaded guilty to manslaughter in the child's death on Vancouver Island nearly 5 years ago. Dante Patrick Lucas was found in medical distress in a home in Port Alberni in March 2018. He was taken to hospital and later died. Last May, Port Alberni RCMP arrested 28-year-old Reichel Frank, Lucas's mother, and 29-year-old Mitchell Frank. They were charged with first-degree murder initially, but have since pleaded guilty to the lesser charge of manslaughter. A sentencing hearing is expected to be held next May. Officers have confirmed that tractor driver involved in a crash on Saturday was part of a convoy headed to Vancouver. The tractor, which had anti-SOGI flags hanging on it, crashed into an RCMP cruiser on Highway 1 when police tried to pull the driver over. After that crash, the tractor, as you can see, tipped over. The driver suffered non-life-threatening injuries and is in hospital. The Independent Investigations Office says it is looking into police actions. Ottawa's recent fall economic statement earmarked $1 billion for new nonprofit public housing and co-ops. Few have been built over the past 3 decades in this province. As John Hernandez reports, advocates say the money is a good start, but are concerned the plan lacks urgency.
The streets of Vancouver's Champlain Heights could be called a window into the past.
Everybody, we all know each other, and we all grew up. Same high schools.
Many of the neighborhood streets here lined with housing cooperatives that are decades old. The affordable homes are nonprofit and governed by their residents.
We control our costs here, and we control our rents here too. And it costs less to live here than it does in other places in Vancouver.
20-year resident Paul Tubby is on the board of directors at his co-op, where he says demand for membership is always high.
It's really not easy because of the waiting list. There's so many people who want to get in.
Few co-ops have been built in BC over the past 30 years. These units were originally financed by federal funding programs that have long since dried up. But Ottawa pledged to reverse the trend in its fall economic statement, committing $1 billion to build more homes like these.
We are supporting nonprofit, co-op, and public housing providers.
The money won't be made available until 2025, a timeline that's drawn criticism from housing advocates.
I'm baffled as to why an economic recovery would have to wait until 2025, 2026 to address what's a burning crisis right now.
And it's unclear exactly how much of the funding will land in BC.
The $1 billion that they've said that is going to be additional for building affordable housing is not very much money when you think that's across the country. So that could be maybe, $70 million, a couple of projects in British Columbia.
Ottawa has also pledged to remove GST for new builds. Proponents say the change could remove a huge hurdle when it comes to getting new projects off the ground.
Taking away some of the tax pressure on some of those new co-op projects, that will mean that co-ops can then reduce the debt load on those projects.
This is an important place to live because it's about community.
A community that can also be a tool to help solve Canada's mounting affordability crisis. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
It may soon cost you more to swim in a public pool or take a mini train in Vancouver. The Park Board is voting on whether to approve user fees and a budget increase. A 6% hike in user fees for Park Board services is possible. The money will be used to support any unfunded projects and infrastructure. The Park Board will also be voting on a $169 million operating budget, up from the current budget of $156 million. And it's time to dust off the ski poles and the boards and head to the slopes if they have snow. In the BC interior, the weather is not cooperating. One Penticton resort has not gotten any snow for a week, meaning their snow-making machines are working overtime.
It's a different type of snow than natural snow. It's very firm, hard, makes a fantastic base. So we'll be able to retain snow with our man-made terrain. It's just not as fun to ski.
Shalman says only 6 of his resort's 80 runs can open next week if the current weather stays as is. He says the mountain needs at least 50 centimeters of snow before they can open all their runs. Putting power into the hands of Indigenous people. A BC First Nation is hoping an ambitious wave energy plan will be their path to reviving an historic village. Radio-Canada's Camille Vernet traveled to Yuquot to hear about a project bringing hope to displaced people.
The ride is choppy as we make our way to Nootka Island on the Vancouver Island's west coast. It's this energy moving the waters of the Pacific Ocean that this scientist is trying to harness.
So it measures wave height, period, so the time in between two crests or troughs of a wave. The great thing about wave energy is they can travel for hundreds of kilometers with very low loss of energy. So ultimately that's what we're trying to harness, whether it be from storms way out in the North Pacific or closer to shore as well.
Not only are waves predictable, they're reliable. Even on this calm, rainy day, there's plenty of wave action.
That's really where wave will shine, so to speak. Is in the winter months when there's tons of energy available and there's high demand for that electricity as well.
This energy project is led by the Mowachat Muchalat First Nation. It's part of their plan to bring power to their ancestral village, Yuquot, and bring the people back to this historic place.
They call their village Yuquot.
This used to be a much larger, tight-knit community. Today, only a couple of homes still stand here, alongside a church and a lighthouse. Darrell William Jr., his father and son, are the last ones to be living here.
It was my grandpa's last wish for me to stay out here, so I will.
His grandparents are the only ones who never left the island.
15 years, I guess. It was just me and my son and my grandparents out here.
Life here is tough and incredibly isolated.
We got solar panels out here. We had a windmill, but it kept breaking down.
Most of the members of the nation who used to call Yuquot home now live an hour boat ride away, near Gold River on Vancouver Island. Anthony Digg has always yearned for return to Yuquot.
Homesick, feel like I've always felt like moving home to Yuquot because I grew up there and it gave me plenty of things to do out there. It gave me a playground, it gave me fishing, it gave me everything.
In the 60s, many relocated to Aminacus on the coast, where they were promised jobs at the paper mill.
I had no choice. We had no choice. I had no choice. Our parents had no choice because they shut down our school.
Air pollution from the mill is 5 times greater here than it is 8 miles down the road in Gold River, where the white people live.
Life here at the foot of the mill was not as promised.
It was horrible there. We were like from here to those trees from the pulp mill, and we had lived with this, the soot, the smell. You could never leave the windows open. The kids couldn't play out. You couldn't go swimming anymore in the water, and there was not too much fish anymore. It deteriorated a lot in those years, and from when the pulp mill existed there. And we had a bit of our people that worked there, but it wasn't as many that should have worked there.
For Margaret James, this energy project is a glimmer of hope.
So this wave project, there's an opportunity there. If it becomes a reality, for people to move back. And there lots of people, elders, have said they would do it.
Reliable and renewable energy is just a first step in what it will take to return.
The biggest problem is we have to start over again. We got to start over from getting off a boat, transportation in and out, and communications.
It will take until 2025 before enough data is collected. The cost may be a challenge, as harnessing the power of the ocean is a complex task.
It is so energy dense that really beats up anything you put in the ocean. Corrosion from salt water, so it's a very challenging environment from an engineering perspective.
But hope for a community that could rise again, and a way of honoring Darrell Jr.'s grandfather, who simply refused to leave.
He would have liked to see this happen. Wave energy, he was pretty hopeful for it, but he couldn't be here to see it.
The power of the ocean, a small step in energizing a return to their coastal roots. Camille Vernet, CBC News, Newport.
Interesting full circle story, seeing how people come back and use the power of nature just like that.
It's really cool to see. It's a great project. I'm excited to see where it goes next.
Where does the weather go next?
Great question. Segue. Oh my goodness. That's how we're going to do every time now. We have still very little change. A little bit up north, you can see a little bit of a low pressure system has made its way into the more northern parts of the province, bringing some precipitation to the north coast, but still very much in under a ridge of high pressure here in the south. The center of that high pressure is down in the States, but extending out into the province. You can see we reestablished that ridge into the end of the week, but later on, by the very end, we do see some low pressure expected to sneak in. Now, the models have been pushing that back day after day. Originally, it was supposed to come midweek, and this is sort of a common feature of global models where they have this ridge breaking down earlier than it often does. So expect that this looks like it might be accurate, but it might get pushed back again. So earliest precipitation end of the week as of now for the lower mainland and much of southern BC. As you can see, some precipitation is making its way into the province, but entirely really on the north coast and into the northwest and a little bit into central BC. So chance of Prince George getting some flurries tonight. If we look here in Vancouver, still lots of cloud building in overnight. Can expect to see some more fog. We'll talk about why later this hour, but expect that we're going to see still some chilly nights ahead.
Okay, thanks very much, Darius.
Thanks, Dan.
A Vancouver Island couple says they are mourning the loss of their pet, claiming it was killed by a wolf-dog hybrid that's on the loose. A warning, some of the details in this story may be disturbing. The couple says they were walking at the Coombs Country Campground on the weekend when the wolf dog snatched their French bulldog, Ocean. The wolf dog weighs about 150 pounds and has been spotted around Coombs since late September. An organization that finds lost dogs on the island believes the animal was abandoned and may have been at least partially domesticated by its owner.
This wolf come out of nowhere, grabbed Ocean, broke my finger, broke the leash, ripped it right out of my hand.
Conservation officers say capturing the wolf dog is not part of their duties because it's not a wild animal. But the couple wants the ban the breeding of wolf dogs and see hefty fines for anybody who abandons any vicious pet. Back to our top story now. It is a growing problem for children and young people. Sextortion. And boys are more frequently the target. As we heard earlier, the costs for children can be deadly. Saurabh Sandhu has more.
From identity theft to phishing attacks, the list of online crime runs long. And now there is a new threat: sextortion.
Sextortion is essentially digital blackmail, so that looks like somebody using your inappropriate content, whether it's photos or videos, and using it as leverage to get more from you, whether that's more inappropriate photos and videos or money.
The sudden rise of these sextortion cases is prompting warnings. New Westminster police say sextortion cases have doubled within just a year.
Alarmingly, the number of sextortion reports that are coming in are addressing males. So we see typically most of the time with different RCMP detachments, it's around 90% of the cases of sextortion being males, specifically young males, from teens all the way up to early 20s.
At middle school, that's an age where a lot of young people are beginning to experience a lot more types of online interactions. They're probably engaging with a little more mature content. Maybe they're starting to develop their own intimate romantic relationships. Young people at middle school and even high school may not have developed the social skills necessary to best navigate those situations.
Males become a very vulnerable population, specifically because we don't normalize male victimization and male extortion, essentially, and sextortion and sexual exploitation. So we have young boys who believe that they are completely immune to any kind of sexual predation. Their guards are down when they're online.
According to the Canadian Centre for Child Protection, 70% of sextortion incidents happen on Instagram and Snapchat. But even gaming platforms are not safe. There are some telltale signs that things aren't right.
If you're talking to somebody online, a friend or a follower, and that person within a short time frame, within a 48-hour period, they start to ask you inappropriate questions, ask you about your dating history, love bomb you, shower you with compliments, and then ask you to switch platforms. So if you're talking on Discord, for example, they ask to switch to WhatsApp or switch to Snapchat. That's the key element that you want to look for.
Scammers, hackers, they will say anything to make you believe that they're trustworthy, that they're someone who they're not, that they're another teen, that they really like you. I mean, they're expert liars and they will say anything.
Oftentimes, victims are hesitant to get help over fear of shame and judgment.
Definitely reach out to your local police, who have extra privileges, extra resources to make sure images like that don't get leaked, don't get spread.
We now also have new legislation where it doesn't need to be a criminal case. It can also be a civil case against the sextorter, which also helps individuals see more of a result after they've been sextorted.
For those caught in a sextortion trap, deleting the pictures or blocking the imposter might not be the best option, and there is a reason for that.
If you block somebody, you might lose access to the conversations you're having with them, and those conversation logs are important.
Don't delete that content, because we have organizations such as CyberTip, the Canadian Centre for Child Protection's program, where we have web crawlers that can try and see if they can find where that content has been shared online.
Experts say parents need to pay close attention to their child's behavior to catch any signs of distress.
Look for changes in behaviors, like sudden changes. Often you'll see distancing from the family, behavioral challenges popping up. So you want to be on the lookout for those indicators.
Don't assume that your children are not on these platforms, even if you have parental controls.
The key for parents is to have open communication with their kids about online experiences, so youth feel confident opening up without fear of being judged or shamed. Saurabh Sandhu, CBC News, Vancouver.
Now, if you need help in talking to a child in your life about sexual exploitation, or you think you might be a victim yourself, you can call the Youth Against Violence line. The number is 1-800-680-4264. That service is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The days are getting shorter, the hours of sun becoming fewer. So why vitamin D supplements are so important, and how to take them, and how much, after this. Hello to everyone watching our commercial-free live stream. Thanks for being here. After years of shrinking attendance and rising heating costs, a former church in Nova Scotia has now closed. But as Aaron Potty reports, it's not all doom and gloom.
A familiar North Sydney landmark is nearly gone. St. Matthew Wesley United Church on Peppitt Street is being taken apart piece by piece, and its wooden boards, bricks, and windows are being recycled for other uses. The minister at St. Matthew Wesley says the former church building held 400 people. But in recent years, attendance at their Sunday services was shrinking.
The numbers and the finances are just not there to sustain these large buildings. They were built at a time, some 50 years ago, some like this 100 years ago, when there was a very large number of people going, when people gave a significant donation in support of the work. Those times passed and decisions needed to be made.
After prayerful consideration, Mills says the congregation decided it was time to move on, and a Halifax area company was hired to tear apart the old building. Construction crews that specialize in recycling are gathering up the old materials so they can be reused in other churches and homes.
As you can see, all of the wood and everything that can be recovered is recovered and recycled. If it can't be recycled, it's responsibly disposed of. The other process is simply knocking everything down, putting it in a landfill, a total waste.
Congregation members say seeing the church torn apart has been painful.
I walk every morning, so I walk by the church, and I have to say each morning, I'm a little taken aback every time I see it. It's a little reminder. Oh, it's going. It's soon going to be gone.
While the original building has closed, members have moved down the road to a smaller church after its members decided to disband. Mills said the two churches eventually amalgamated under the St. Matthew Wesley name.
It's really a rejuvenation of two congregations who had thought the story was over, but new chapters were opened by their willingness to say we'll carry on into the future, and we'll carry on together.
Although she's sad about the loss of their original church, Kehoe agrees.
I believe it's Ecclesiastes. To everything there is a season. There was a season for that church, and I'm proud of what they're doing with the church, reclaiming the structure itself. But our community is now here.
Members of the congregation say they're not sure what will happen to the land that once housed their former church. They say that decision will be made by officials with the United Church of Canada. Aaron Potty, CBC News, North Sydney.
Experts have long touted the benefits of taking vitamin D. Canada's Food Guide recommends everyone over the age of 2 take the sunshine vitamin every day. That's because most of us don't get enough vitamin D from food, and we don't get enough natural sun, especially in the winter, to make up for that deficiency. So what does vitamin D actually do for your health? To answer these questions, we have an expert, Dr. Jacqueline Pedersen, a neurologist and professor in the Department of Medicine at UBC, currently teaching at the University of Northern BC. Dr. Pedersen, first of all, how widespread is vitamin D deficiency in Canada?
Yeah, so having suboptimal vitamin D status is common across all age groups and geographical regions of Canada, especially during the winter months when the sun's contribution to vitamin D status is negligible. The vitamin D insufficiency in Canada has been estimated to be about 40% if we use the Institute of Medicine's blood level cutoff of 50 nanomoles per liter, and even higher than this, up to about 65% if we use the Endocrine Society's cutoff of 75 nanomoles per liter.
So why is vitamin D so important, not just for bones, but overall health?
Yeah, so vitamin D has many effects in the body, mainly through its ability to influence multiple genes. And for this reason, it's often been referred to as a hormone or prohormone, in addition to being a vitamin. So adequate levels of vitamin D have been linked to optimal immune system functioning, better cardiovascular health, lower cancer-related and all-cause mortality, as well as better cognition and a lower risk of dementia. And now when I say linked, I mean that there's an association between vitamin D and these outcomes. We don't yet know if this association is causal.
Now, I understand you're working on a study involving young people. What have you found so far?
Yeah, so we were interested to know how common vitamin D insufficiency is among young adolescents in northern BC. And we also wanted to know if vitamin D status is associated with cognition in this younger age group, as it seems to be in adults and demonstrated in some of my earlier studies. So we found that vitamin D insufficiency was common, affecting about 41% of participants. And we also found that vitamin D status was linked to the adolescent's ability to recall a complex visual figure and draw it from memory. Specifically, those with higher levels of vitamin D did better on this test of visual memory than those with lower levels. Now, these findings mirror what we have seen in adults, that vitamin D status is associated with cognition, especially more complex cognitive processes like visual learning and memory.
And lastly, we appreciate your time. For someone who's watching this and thinking, how much should I take? Do you have a recommendation?
Yeah, so that's a very good question, and recommendations do vary. I mentioned the Institute of Medicine and the Endocrine Society having different cutoff levels. Now, these levels pertain mostly to bone health, and many experts believe that a higher level is likely required for other health outcomes. So I would probably go towards the higher level of 75 nanomoles per liter, and for most adults, this would require about 1,500 to 2,000 international units per day. And for children, probably more like 1,000 units per day.
All right. Dr. Jacqueline Pedersen with UBC, teaching at the University of Northern BC right now. We appreciate your time and your expertise. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
A fourth person has now died after a weekend shooting in Winnipeg. What police are saying about the investigation and what they don't yet know after this.
Halifax's homelessness strategy was officially endorsed this fall, much of it envisioned with provincial government cooperation. It considers where unhoused people are currently living and what should happen to them. As of November 1st, about 1,014 people are looking for stable housing. Many in tents tucked away in sheltered green spaces, in fields exposed to harsh weather, or in urban forests, away from prying eyes. So where will these people go under the new strategy? And how will the city look? Let's start with the latest announcement, an emergency winter shelter. This former church on Windmill Road will have space for up to 100 people and will operate 24 hours a day for at least the next 2.5 years. Those 16 or older experiencing homelessness will have access to 3 meals a day, showers, on-site storage, and support services. The city strategy states it will be a priority to move people sleeping rough or in tents into this winter shelter, but not all will be able to. So, the city has earmarked outdoor locations, each with its own tent limit and designated site for those tents, that will be patrolled by city staff. In Dartmouth, there's Geary Street and Windmill Road, then Green Road Park, tucked in behind the Mount Herman Cemetery, and finally Martins Park by King's Wharf. Near downtown Halifax, there's Grand Parade by City Hall. The Barrington Street Greenway will have 2 designated sites. Tents will be allowed on University Avenue berms, 6 tents total for the whole street. And finally, Victoria Park. 12 tents will be allowed at the end of the park with the fountain. Further afield, there's Beaufort Park, the Correctional Center Diamond in Lower Sackville, Lower Flynn Park between the train tracks and Quinpool Road, and then about half of Saunders Park toward William Hunt Avenue. Some people living rough may be moved into one of the winterized pallet shelters purchased by the province. About 100 will be organized in Halifax, possibly into villages based on the needs of those living in them. The city will provide some land, but for now, these sites are just possibilities. Then there are the tiny homes. Here's where they're going. The Correctional Center Diamond in Lower Sackville. But the tents and the people living in them now will be moved before this project can get underway. Here it's planned that there will be 52 units, housing 62 people, about 200 square feet each, laid out like bachelor apartments. For a size comparison, the average shipping container is about 320 square feet. The strategy says the goal is to have 30 homes ready by the summer of 2024. Finally, all of this is in addition to the former Waverley Inn. The Barrington Street building is set to open in December as temporary supportive housing for women and gender-diverse people experiencing homelessness. The strategy walks a line between financial, environmental, and compassionate considerations. From facilitating intake and selection of people living in tents to snow clearing and maintenance. All of this work needs to happen quickly and effectively, it says, because the lives of those living rough are at risk. David Irish, CBC News, Halifax.
A fourth person has now died after a weekend shooting in Winnipeg. Police spoke to reporters today, but as Cameron McIntosh reports, so far, no one has been arrested, no hint of suspects, and there's no apparent motive.
The body of one of the dead removed from the crime scene. 5 people were shot in this Winnipeg rooming house over the weekend. 4 are dead. As police pour through what could be a lengthy investigation, Winnipeg's police chief is urging calm and patience.
We will do everything that we can to discover why this happened and who was involved.
Among the dead, 2 sisters, Stephanie and Crystal Beardy, both from Lake St. Martin First Nation.
I know the mother personally, and she's upset, and she's grieving for her 2 children.
2 men are also dead. Malelik Laseri Lasickle, Dylan Maxwell Lavalley. A 3rd man is in critical condition. Police say all were found in the same suite. What's unclear is how they're connected and why they were targeted. Police are appealing to the public for information.
Someone knows about this crime as well. This is a dangerous offender.
The shootings have prompted worry in the neighborhood.
The neighborhood needs to be cleaned up. It's plain and simple. There's just too much gangs, too much drugs.
Manitoba's premier calling the violence unacceptable.
To the people responsible for this, I want to send a clear message. You do not run our streets. You do not own our streets.
Meanwhile, police say it'll take days to finish their work here with an investigation that's large in scale that has no clear leads. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Qatar's foreign ministry says Israel and Hamas have agreed to extend the truce in Gaza by 2 more days. The announcement comes on the final day of the original 4-day pause in fighting. In the meantime, Israel says 11 more hostages being held in Gaza have been freed. And as Tom Perry reports, Hamas said it received a list of 33 Palestinians to be released from Israeli jails in return.
An Israeli mother reunited with her 2 daughters, aged 8 and 15, kidnapped and held hostage by Hamas on October 7th, an attack that left other members of the family dead. Since that day, Israel has pounded parts of Gaza to rubble, exacting a steep toll on Palestinian civilians. Israel and Hamas have now agreed to extend a 4-day truce.
Now, in order to extend the pause, Hamas has committed to releasing another 20 women and children over the next 2 days. We would, of course, hope to see the pause extended further, and that will depend upon Hamas continuing to release hostages.
In return, Israel has been freeing Palestinian women and minors held in its prisons. More aid is also being allowed into Gaza, where Palestinian families have been crowding UN relief centers, trying to get their hands on desperately needed supplies. We came here to get flour, this woman says. We're in a severe crisis and the truce days are not enough. We want a permanent truce. The UN Secretary General warns this extension won't be enough to deliver all the aid that's needed.
I strongly hope that this will enable us to increase even more the humanitarian aid to the people in Gaza that is suffering so much, knowing that even with that additional amount of time, it will be impossible to satisfy all the dramatic needs of the population in Gaza.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today offered a personal tour of a kibbutz attacked on October 7th to one of the world's wealthiest men, Elon Musk. The owner of the website X, formerly known as Twitter, has faced a backlash after he endorsed a post on the site seen as anti-Semitic. In Gaza, meanwhile, Palestinians continue to seek safety, while in Israel, more families are hoping to be reunited with loved ones taken hostage, with an uneasy truce between Israel and Hamas holding for now. Tom Perry, CBC News, Ottawa.
We've seen electric vehicles take over some streets of Metro Vancouver, but is it high time they hit the open ocean? We talk electric boats and electric fishing next.
Fantastic for me, it's amazing. Actually, when I was a kid, it's my dream to see the Christmas light. Maligayang Pasko means Merry Christmas. Yeah, and we're putting stars on top. 1, 2, 3. Then when I came here and I bought this house, I said, can I make a Christmas light? So everybody come in and they're gonna sit. They are they're gonna appreciate what we have. Okay, move. 1, 2, 3. This one's called a Belen. When Jesus Christ was born, you know. Mary is missing. They have Mary, Joseph, and the 3 kings. Most of the kids, they are coming and they're gonna Christmas carol. Then after they're gonna sing 1 or 2 songs or 3, then you are giving money to them. Ang Pasko ay sumapit. Like that. Christmas is coming like that. That's too much, yeah. This one is Christmas light, the tube one. And we put to the stars, just like the rays like this, if you can see it. And that's an amazing one. Go! December 1st, we're gonna start the lights. We're gonna, everybody one by one, so if you can take the video at nights, exactly just like when you're going to the glow, we can see it. Because everything, we're gonna one by one, the Maligayang Pasko, the lights on top, the trees, the Belen, and we're also putting a church over here. One is enough. I feel so good. It's like, I'm turning back when I was kids, because when I was kids, I'm doing also, house to house to them. Yeah. I'm doing it. I'm returning back my kids' turn at one.
Let's make the season kind with CBC's annual Food Bank Day coming up on December 1st. Kick off the holiday season and join us for a special day of programming, all in support of local food banks across BC. This year, for the first time ever, you can watch our live stream of the entire day on CBC Gem and at cbc.ca/foodbankday. We'll see you December 1st. We've all seen how electric cars are taking over many streets in BC, but could they eventually be sailing on the open oceans? Can electric go out to sea? Brett Ruskin takes this look at the believers and skeptics around introducing electric-powered boats to Atlantic Canada's lobster fishery.
Diesel lobster boats sound like this. And electric boats like this. Sue Malloy imagines a quieter, cleaner, greener way to fish for lobster with upgraded boats.
We have put our electric motor. You can see the size of the electric motor is not very big. It fits underneath the deck. And then we have a belt system to attach to a sprocket on the drive shaft.
The crew would use the diesel engine to get out to their fishing spot, but then switch to electric power for low-speed work like hauling in traps. With bigger batteries, they could even use electricity the whole time, with diesel just as a backup.
We left the existing throttle for the diesel engine. We added another throttle for the electric.
Some captains like the idea.
Would you buy, build, have an electric boat too? Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Andrew Arbuckle fishes through the summer and comes back to shore each afternoon.
We sell our catch each day.
Instead of a gas pump, he could plug in an electric boat overnight to a charger. But it's not as easy for boats that go miles offshore and stay there for days. Dan Fleck represents boats like those.
What do you think the average fishing captain is going to say about this idea?
No.
Just no.
Just no.
Others on the wharf agree.
Yeah, 50 miles out inside a long extension cord.
It's just wishful thinking. It ain't gonna work.
No.
Is this just about grumpy fishing captains not wanting change?
These captains who run these vessels and run their small businesses are business people. Believe me, if they can find a nickel or a place to save a nickel, they will. But an electric motor is not a way to save money.
So while there are promising options on the horizon guaranteed to cut costs and emissions for bigger boats hauling in the most lobster, the technology and trust in it isn't there yet. Brett Ruskin, CBC News, Halifax.
From wave power to electric fishing power. All a bunch of potential, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
It's very cool to see. Very mixed reactions.
Yeah, indeed.
You can see why.
You're being very subtle about that, yes.
Yes.
Comes with costs, that's for sure.
Speaking of fishing, fog on the water. Segue. See, there we go.
Very good.
You can see that we had a couple foggy days. So this is actually Sunday. I was going to just show you on our map, but this is actually a really good representation. So the gray is the high cloud. In blue, you can see the low fog. So Sunday afternoon, I was going out grocery shopping, and it was a very foggy day. It was very gloomy, and that's because of all this low fog that we've had. Now, as we see these cooler days, you're going to have air that can't hold. So as the air cools from where it is during midday, as we get into the evening, it can't hold as much moisture anymore, and that just comes out and it forms fog, which is really just this extremely low-lying cloud. And so that's what we're going to continue to see probably tomorrow, potentially into Wednesday as well, because we still have these cool temperatures that are going to continue dropping overnight. Here you can see the last 24 hours, plenty of cloud. It's still happening, clearing up a little bit this afternoon. We did have some blue skies, at least here in the south. Further north, we actually did have some clear skies, but also some flurries as well. You can only make them out here in Prince George, but other parts of the north, and especially the coast, also got some precipitation earlier today and will continue to over the next 24 hours or so. But part of the other reason that we're seeing so much fog is the lack of wind. That ridge of high pressure that we talked about earlier, still in place, keeping us very calm, which doesn't allow that fog to get pushed out and moving around, because that movement of the air would also inhibit the fog formation. Now, as we get later into the week, into Wednesday and probably Thursday, potentially Wednesday, as we get some more low-lying cloud, that will also prevent fog formation because of it allows that air to warm up a little bit more and hold more moisture. So you can see that we do have a little bit less cloud as we get later into the week, but still some forming right around the water because of all that moisture coming from the ocean. Now, temperatures going to come back down in the south. They have had a little bit of a reprieve, but going back down in the interior, staying around similar on the coast, going up and down a little bit of fluctuation, but not too much. In terms of conditions, expect to continue to see some cloud, especially low-lying and in the valleys especially, but that precipitation mostly streaming into the north, but not too consistent. The next system not really going to roll through until midweek. And then here in Vancouver, you can see just plenty of cloud building in, and it's later midweek that we start to see that fog start to be inhibited by that cloud.
Okay, thanks very much, Darius.
Thanks, Dan.
Food insecurity is a growing problem across this country. A report released today in Ontario is painting a dim picture of the current need in that province. As Jamie Strachan reports, it says last year marked a 40% jump in the number of people who rely on them.
In this bustling Toronto food bank, the pace is dizzying. Volunteers scurry to pack and process food for clients who are desperate.
If it wasn't for the food bank, I'm telling you, there would be a lot of people starving, including myself, because we really need it.
Everyone's story of why they are here is different, yet very much the same. They don't have enough to cover life's basics.
All that money goes to the rent and the bills. By the time I finish pay the bills, I have nothing. Sometimes not even enough to buy a cup of tea.
With 3 children to feed, Pon works as a cleaner. But at the end of the day, skyrocketing food prices have made it impossible to fill her family's fridge.
You go to the groceries, you pick up a few items, and they're telling you $200. And you're looking at the food on the counter, and I'm asking them, what am I paying $200 for? It doesn't even last a month. That's like a week.
Ever since COVID, visits to food banks have surged. It seems every time the numbers are examined, usage continues to grow exponentially. A new report shows a sobering situation in Ontario, 60% more users than before COVID, a 38% increase from last year. The biggest shift? The huge increase in the number of users who are working.
That old kind of saying of going to school and getting a job sets you up for life is no longer applicable. It doesn't guarantee that you're going to be able to afford your most basic necessities.
People who have been working in food banks for years say there is a desperation never seen before. More people admitting they can't make it on their own.
I feel that we're in a state of emergency at this point, and something has to be done to take care of this, because people cannot continue to deal with this. Folks are dealing with a lot. It's also impacting their mental health.
Pon says for those desperately fighting to survive, times are bleak and the need greater than ever.
If you're not mentally and physically strong now, you cannot make it out there. You can't.
Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
We are seeing much of the same demand for food banks here in BC, with almost 200,000 visits to food banks in the past year. This coming Friday, we here at CBC British Columbia will be doing our part, hosting CBC BC's Food Bank Day. We'll have a special day of programming for you here on radio, online, and streaming as well. And we'll have a special 6 p.m. broadcast on Friday as well. And we hope that you will donate what you can. Coming up, how some supplemental grain is bringing a herd of mountain caribou back from the brink. We're going to journey north after this.
First half of that, rather. Whitmore already looking to push in the race prematurely. This is very dominant from the American. Canadian guaranteed the silver at the very least, but she, as you can see there, both in the same half of that racetrack. 2.392. Whitmore continuing to be dominant.
He's also getting a great second half of the race.
That's the difference, 2.5 steady, very steady in the last couple of 100 metres. 2.5. much difference. Whitmore, see she's in control. Contest in the United States. Just taking it back a little bit with 750 metres to go. 2.22 behind. Let's have a look at this split here. Oh, it is coming down. It is coming down. And Whitmore, who looked dominant, is now tiring. 500 metres to go. And, is there enough time for Pembrokeshire to come back? She is starting to put down some pressure. Down to 1.4. Will she run out of time? Dan Burritt will find another gear. There's the bell, and there's the time. It's over a second. Heading towards the 4-minute mark. Oh, it's half a second. It's going to be close. Is there enough time to finish it off? Let's have a look here. Oh, she's done it. She's done it. Melissa Pembrokeshire somehow has come roaring back in the last 1,000 metres. Goodness me, what a comeback. You can see the Canadians on their feet in front of us, looking around, not quite sure. Well, you have to feel for Jamie Whitmore who controlled that race until the last, 400 metres, 500 metres. And the Canadians...
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox. On December 1st, join us for CBC British Columbia's annual Food Bank Day for a special day of broadcasts. The event is a yearly tradition for many, and we're bringing you a new edition of CBC's Food Bank Day that you can watch and stream live on CBC Gem and cbc.ca/BC. Make the season kind and donate at cbc.ca/foodbankday.
You're looking at a live shot of BC Place, which as of next week will be given a new name for one day.
The stadium will be called Christine Sinclair Place on Tuesday, December 5th, in honor of the soccer legend's last international match.
Sinclair will face off against the Australian national team on Friday in Langford before kicking off her last international game in the newly christened stadium next week. Mountain caribou are a very unique species that are currently threatened here in BC.
But one man is trying to turn the tide with a program to supplement their feed with grain for the winter months.
We took a ride with Doug Hurd near McLeod Lake to hear his work, see his work, and hear how it's going.
My name's Doug Hurd. I've been studying and researching caribou for about 40 years, both in the Northwest Territories and in British Columbia and a little bit in other parts of Canada. And right now I'm working on a specific research project with this caribou herd at Kennedy Siding, trying to increase their numbers and learn more about their general biology. Caribou have always been coming to this site, and the caribou spend most of their time, the rest of the year, they're in the mountains on much higher elevation, and they just come in the early winter to this location here where there's terrestrial lichen that they feed on. Like I said, this is a supplemental feeding project. They're still free-ranging animals. I've been working on this herd for 10 years, and it's important for two reasons. One is we're trying to increase the numbers of this population specifically because they had been declining until the point I started doing this supplemental feeding project, and also because we want to increase the numbers of British Columbia caribou in general, and so the general information I'm learning about supplemental feeding could possibly be applied elsewhere. And I spread the food out into different boxes or feeders, and then in addition to that I have trail cameras, motion sensitive trail cameras set up, and those cameras at and around the feeders take pictures of all the caribou, and each caribou then can be identified by their sex and age and antler structure from the photographs. And when I do that, then I'm able to get an estimate of the number of caribou that come to the feeders. Numbers have just about tripled since I began over 10 years, but I'm not, supplemental feeding is not the only management activity that's going on. In addition, the provincial government has a widespread wolf removal program, and that's been going on for 9 of the 10 years, and it appears that that's responsible for most of the increase. Now, and before we started, the caribou were declining at about 10% a year, and now they're increasing at about 16% a year. So it's been a huge reversal, and primarily because of wolf removal, but supplemental feeding appears to be contributing 3% to that growth.
Beautiful animals and big.
Big? How big, Dan?
Well, my fun fact is adult bulls are up to 400 pounds, mature females up to 225 pounds, and according to the government of BC, population about 1,500, so they are endangered.
1,500.
1,500, that's it. Current population about 1,500 and 15 separate herds throughout BC.
Wow.
So, threatened by loss of habitat and wolf predation. Yes, South Selkirk caribou herd at high risk of local extinction. So, hard to save them.
That's not a very happy way to end up. Let's talk about how beautiful they are.
Sure,
and
there
how
you
much
go.
They look like reindeer.
How big and awesome they are. There we are.
Fantastic.
Thanks for being with us tonight at 6. You can watch this newscast online at CBC Gem, our free app, as well as YouTube and our website, cbc.ca/BC. And we'll both be here at 11 o'clock, right after the National. Good night.